Howdy everybody. I just thought I'd show you a little bit of the fun we're getting into today here. So we got this Kobelco, what is she? An SK350. Long stick. Now this is kind of a Franken machine. Far as they've been able to figure out, the stick is actually off a cat of some kind and then got modified, installed on here, and nobody knows the history at this point. But anyways, they had some digging to do, and the pin that was in here walked out and was only in this ear, and it proceeded to chew that baby up. You can see the huge mushroom out on this side. So you can see I've already been welding a bunch, but that starts to give you some idea that it had broke the side spacer plates. Both of them just sheared them right off there. Those were somebody's add-on. They weren't factory. So anyhow, this side you can see has quite a bit of floppity-loppity in her, but that was the side that was actually running. It had enough slap in it that it broke the tab off from the pin that was in there. Slid out, and I don't know if the operator knew it had done it and kept going or what, but anyways, he kept digging and proceeded to run it with just the pin in there and womp this hole out. I mean, we're talking like 2 inches oversized. So as you can see, I got them inside plates on. Now, one thing I'll point out, it did bend this ear a bit, tweaked the thing out. We talked it over. I didn't have my big rosebud here to straighten that out. We decided to go ahead, and what I did was it had mushroomed out on the inside about that bad. I just ground those mushroomed off spots until it came up square to where it needed to be, and then filled all in behind it. Now, I might normally be a little bit worried about that, but I'm going to be putting 1 inch of buildup in there, so there's going to be lots of material between the pin and whatever voids I might possibly have in there. So anyways, I've been welding on this thing for about an hour now, and I'll bet you I've got 2 to go by the time I get, well, maybe not that much, but probably a good hour and a half to get the bottom side of this filled in, and then of course all the fun of welding overhead filling in that void. So, and if I'd have known that it was womped out this bad, this is a lesson learned. I thought I knew this already, and I didn't pay attention to my own rules. And normally would have somebody send me a picture, but this one I just they say I was kind of wallowed out. Well, kind of wallowed out was a lot wallowed out. So if I'd have known this is what we were up against, I probably would have set up one of my suitcase feeders with 16th inch wire and sped this process up. But as it is, I got 045 dual shield, and we're making the best of a situation, and we'll get her plowed out. The thing I did, by the way, this is a real stunt because we don't have anything good to reference off from. Like, they got this thing all sitting here curled up, assembled. So trying to decide where true was on that pin was its own little barrel of fun. So what I ended up doing, this ain't super precise, but thankfully there's enough play and everything else will get away with it. I measured back from this pin, laid a straight edge across here, and gave myself a line across this. And then because the 2 side spacers had got broke off, they actually weren't wallowed out that bad. Matter of fact, they had a big enough burn them, I had to die grind on them a little to get the new pin to go through them. So what I did is, this one I just eyeballed in the center of the wear, welded that one in, and then stuck this one through here with that one on it, and measured from the pin over to there until I had the pin square this direction. And then I've got a little magnetic digital level. It's not quite as precise as the Digipass one you've seen me use, but it's decent. And the beauty of it is I can stick it on the end of a pin. So I stuck it on the end of that pin and then stuck it on the end of this pin and played with it until and then you can zero it out. So I just zeroed it on that pin and then thumped this thing around with a dead blow until I was showing 0 on that level off the end of the pin, and then equal measurements to that line. And that's where I have tacked them inside spacers at. Now, before I go to boring, we'll do some more double check, and that just got me close enough that I knew them spacers were about centered up. But when I'm setting up my boring bar, I'll get it, centered up off in those spacers, and then I'm going to take some measurements back to some of these other pins and points and just do my best to make sure we've really got her squared up before I actually do any cutting. But anyway, so that's what we're up to here on this fine fall day. I'll show you some pictures. I'll probably come back, shoot some video once I get her welded up, and then set up to bore it. All right, everybody. So here's where we're at. We are wrapped up. Throw that up there. So you can see we did get a hole round again. Now, see, that's funny. It had, mushed out so far on both sides from that hammering that hole out. I decided not to take that back down completely to flush because it's just that much more surface there. You can see I've got a little bit where it falls away there because it was just mushed out there and there. And I didn't bother building that up to match it. But anyways, long and short of it is, wasn't going to hurt anything. The other reason I did that is because this ear being bent out, if I'd actually tried to cut that flat and get rid of all of that, I'd have had to have cut into this face at the top. So it's not hurting anything. They throw some yellow paint back on it. It won't look bad. But otherwise, she came out nice. We ended up holding this out almost 1/4 of an inch at the top to allow for that ear being bent, but that wasn't a big deal because I could reach in there, fill a whole bunch behind it, and then remember I put like 1 inch of weld in here, so it's not like there's some huge cavity in there because there's huge amounts of weld right up against the inside face of that thing. This one came out pretty good. There's a little bit of a booger there and there where I didn't quite fill enough to get the sharp corner back, but we were not going to tear down and add more weld just to deal with that. So anyway, this job, start to finish, took 8.5 hours is what we had in her. And to be honest with you, oh shoot, over half. I mean, there's always a lot of setup and tear down time involved, but as far as actual working time, it took at least twice as long to weld this as it did to bore it. I didn't keep good track, but I'm going to tell you, I probably was knocking on the door of 4 hours of welding time. I don't know. I had to take breaks. Maybe it's 3 hours with the gun, with the trigger actually pulled, but it was way more than I thought it was going to be. There's just so stinking much buildup that had to happen. But anyhow, we got her licked in and out in one day. It's about 6:30 here at night, and I am packing up the last of my tools and going to take my 1.25 hour drive back home. That's the other thing. This job's a long ways away. I think this is the furthest I've ever gone to go line boring, but it's a customer I've worked for that just happens to be working up here. They're local to my shop, so that's why I'm up here doing it. Not that I wouldn't do it for somebody else. It's just not my favorite thing. But anyhow, so there it is in a nutshell. Another bore fixed, and hopefully this machine will be back up and digging tomorrow.